Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn today. Really appreciate you being in attendance with us, and we hope this is going to be an informative time together. I know, glad to have our guest, Roger Thorpe, with us today, and we're going to be talking about how to offer great benefits packages for your nonprofit organization. Roger is a professional in this. He's been doing it for many years, and we're just grateful to have him. We'll give him a bit of an intro very soon. We're Cause Leadership is bringing this to you today. We're recognizing our 40th year in business this past year, and part of that is we've been trying to put together this series of informative lunch and learns, and we hope it's useful to you. As we jump into it, I just want to give a quick intro of myself. I'm Dave Hutchinson. I'm the President and CEO of Cause Leadership, which provides executive search services to the charitable sector and nonprofit sector. And with me today, as I mentioned, is Roger Thorpe. Roger's the president of Thorpe Benefits, and we're going to ask him a few questions today. But also for your information on our blog at causeleadership.com, Roger did a guest post on benefits last month, and so those are there as well for your reference afterwards. And of course, we'll be posting this to our YouTube channel as well. So Roger, just thank you and welcome. Really appreciate you joining us today. And if you wouldn't mind, just maybe giving yourself a quick intro and tell us about you, tell us about Thorpe Benefits, and we just appreciate you joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here and looking forward to this conversation. So yes, I'm Roger Thorpe. I'm president of Thorpe Benefits. We're an integrated benefits and wellness consultant company that is hired mainly by senior level HR finance people when an organization is maturing and looking to sort of upgrade that investment or that oversight in that area, taking it from sort of a traditional, back in the background to more of an upfront reward. That's when we kind of come to the table.
Excellent. Thanks, Roger. Appreciate that. And so just as we step into this webinar today, we're speaking today with people who are working in the charitable space or the nonprofit space. And realistically, we're looking at how do we attract employees to our organizations? How do we retain them once we have them? And in a sector that doesn't always have a benefits package available to them. Certainly people are aware of them in the corporate space and perhaps larger private sector companies. And certainly some of the major charities in Canada do have them as well. But we have 86,000 charities in Canada today, and not everybody has access to benefits. So part of it is how can we help them understand the benefits that are available to them, and perhaps in some sort of a value add or competitive advantage that they might be able to bring those into their organization as well. So I'm going to leave it there, Roger, and let you take it from here. So if you would give us kind of the state of the union of benefits in Canada today, and perhaps how they apply to the nonprofit space as you're familiar with them.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see if some of this resonates with the people on the call, and it will be great to get feedback along the way. So I'm looking forward to seeing some chatter. Does this make sense? Do you have something you want to go deeper in? So we'll keep this very fluid, as you had suggested, right? But sure. Really, some quick observations, really, as to what benefits look like in this space. I would say there is some degree of plans that are looking a bit outdated, and that can be that they are just something that an HR team or an ops team doesn't have a lot of time for. So there are features that maybe are a little bit old school, or there's something missing that the marketplace is looking for. So I would say there's some of that happening. There's also a lot of misunderstanding. So you have a plan that's there, might be amazing, but if it's not communicated often enough, especially as new employees are coming and going, it's lost, really. So I think there's a lot of employees thinking about what they don't have covered, or they misunderstand a benefit, and that can create some confusion and resentment. So I would say there's a bit of a lack of communication sometimes.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Sure.
And the plan can be, it obviously could be missing a feature that today would be considered just a hygiene item, like something that a new employee would expect would be there. And of course, if it has something that's really, call it offensive to people, we want to make sure we get rid of that.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is that from a financial standpoint, is there are plans now that are way too exposed. And what I mean by that is the major concern we have is the future cost of drugs. And if a plan is wide open with a drug formulary that covers virtually every drug that's approved, the cost of these claims sometimes is not something we can absorb within the budget.
Right.
And if the budget is fairly fixed, we just can't afford that volatility. So I would say important to understand where the exposures are on the plan and maybe protect those where you can. I would say there's also sometimes a feeling that there's benefit, there's group insurance protection, but once the employee is going through an incident or a medical issue, a mental health concern, that sometimes they're left on their own to get through it themselves, right?
Yeah.
So we need to guide and really be there for the human factor that's involved. So wellness or well-being is getting more attention, and it should ideally be integrated more, not only with the benefit offering, but be communicated more frequently as part of that.
Yeah.
I would say, as it relates to exposure, I think a lot of our clients have gotten better at forecasting where things are going. So if healthcare cost is rising as fast as it is, and some of you may have seen this occur in terms of your claims and your premiums rising faster than normal, we need to look 2, 3, 4 years ahead to see what's this going to look like as a line item, right? Because it could end up being unsustainable, and we don't really want to be in a position where we have to do something drastic. So better to know now than to be surprised. And with that, I still see last comment would be still a lack of transparency. So in the world of group insurance, it's common for someone to get a renewal and just kind of see the cost, but not necessarily be explained or told why it's trending in that direction. Sure. So there is a need for more learning about how pricing works, how the factors within rates actually add up, and more disclosure, more transparency, I think makes people today much more confident in what they're doing. So that's just a quick roundabout of some issues that I would say are deserving some attention.
No, that's great. So Roger, I mean, part of the work that you do through Thorpe Benefits is that you are an independent insurance provider, or not provider, broker.
Right.
And so some of the things you've mentioned, either helping somebody understand what their current benefits plan does or doesn't include, or helping them modernize it to include benefits that are perhaps more attractive to different demographics. Can you just comment on that, how you might help somebody understand what they've got and help them decide what would be best as far as, particularly as it relates to attraction and retention of talent?
Yeah, and those two words are very different, right? Attraction, during a time when we just needed to find people no matter what. We needed the shiny objects in the job posting that would even get people to stop and say, ooh, that looks interesting. So what is your shiny object, right? For us, it's a 4-day work week. That is a game changer for us in terms of getting people to stop on a posting and say, whoa, now that's important.
Yeah.
So we need to obviously revisit what those items are, but people who have hunkered down and really given their loyalty to your organization, why do they stay? Is benefits going to be something that they feel is taking care of them? Like if they've devoted themselves to your cause, your purpose, and they believe in what you're doing, and they know that they could probably go somewhere else and maybe make more money or work twice as hard, but they would rather stay. I think being authentic with designing a plan that is really connecting with that human factor. So what I would say is, as far as finding out what to use, it's not as easy as just benchmarking. This is what everyone does. let's just copy their plan and assume that we're good. Plans today are so much more tailored to the core values of the organization.
Yeah.
And so it starts with philosophy, and then the plan is designed to match that ideally, right? But we need to ask employees what they need. We need to see what they care about. So what I've seen as being the most sort of impactful in terms of a win or success is if you stop and are willing to ask employees, tell us what you like about the current plan. This is not a survey for a wish list here, but what do you like most? What do you like least? And you will get feedback. And if you can turn that around and come back and say, given what you have told us, we have come back with a number of changes that we think make sense for everyone and that we can manage and sustain. So that to me is the big win, is being willing to survey and do focus groups or whatever it takes to hear and then respond. So beyond that, then it gets very specific about what each organization needs. And this goes to the article that we wrote was, do you need more protective elements or do you need more flexibility? Do you need to appeal to the here and now of what someone wants on getting a claim paid quickly? Do they want a spending account to just get what they need? Or do they want to feel like if something happens, how will that be handled medically? What's that experience going to be look like? How are you going to take care of me? So we kind of have to balance those two factors.
Yeah, really good. Thanks, Roger. So, from our perspective as a executive search firm, recruiting leaders and emerging leaders for the organizations that we work with, to be able to say to a potential prospect candidate, XYZ charity nonprofit has a really competitive benefits package. You'll be able to sign on, really quickly into your employment, and the benefits will kick in immediately. Something along those lines is always really helpful for us. Not to make this about us, but it certainly helps us when we're pitching an opportunity to the marketplace that the organization is providing benefits. But as we kind of alluded to, the not-for-profit space, charity organizations don't necessarily have the kind of expense or the kind of budget to be able to spend on the expense of a benefits plan. Can you give us a sense of what some of these packages might cost, and or what they would include, even for something that gets them started? And how do they get started, I guess, would be the other.
Yeah, great question. I think it makes sense to have a bit of a per head per employee kind of number in your head as to what you can manage. And we can certainly guide people as to what that range might look like. But let's say realistically that we need to spend, $2,500, $3,000 a year on an employee. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So we're going to balance that investment across elements, like I mentioned, of protective. So what can we do to really be there in case something significant happens? But what else can we do to make the employee sort of own their responsibility and get what they need paid in that time? So with flexibility, it sounds like Spider-Man, but with flexibility comes responsibility. Yeah. So if I give you a spending account, I actually need to coach you and teach you on how to spend it wisely, where to find the best deals on glasses and dispensing. All these things are great to help people take responsibility of that money.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's the nuance of communication that needs to go on top of a plan that is realistic. So I think within a limited budget, you can still make something very attractive.
Right.
And a lot of the time, again, it's how you sell the value that makes it attractive and doesn't sort of get buried behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But it is great in order to, if you're setting up a plan for the first time, it makes sense to walk before you run, leave yourself some room. Yeah. Depending on your claims, that's going to determine where your premiums go. So,
right.
And on that note, I think most not-for-profits might consider, caps or limits on certain benefits to avoid what I mentioned before, is that exposure
Yeah,
situation.
sure.
Can we afford to pay for every drug on the market? No, no company can, no non-for-profit can, but
Yeah,
we need to sort of realize that we have to draw a line in some places to keep it manageable.
yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that you do through Thorpe Benefits is a lot of education with your clients.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned that. What does that kind of look like on a practical basis when somebody is working with you?
It's a lot of listening. It's a lot of fact finding, soft fact finding in terms of understanding philosophy, because really we realize that group insurance or benefits is one aspect of a reward system, right? So we're
Yeah,
not we're aware that many other parts of that offering are going to be as attractive or more. So where do we fit in? Well, we have to get really creative. We have to, again, encourage them to let us talk to the employees to hear what they have to say.
hmm,
Again, that is the big win we can create by coming back with that in mind. Um, yeah, I just think that, there's just so many tools that we have that can model this. So you talk high level at first.
yeah,
What do I care about? What's the employee experience going to be like? But then we get down to real numbers. So we can then start going and playing around with, toggles of what if we had this? What if we took away that? What
yeah,
if we took this core part of the plan out and moved that to more of a flexible approach?
yeah,
We've built things that allow people to model all that, and it takes a while to get it right. You can't just, rubber stamp a plan and put it out there.
right,
The best plans we've had are the ones that are built from all those angles, and then they're launched with a lot of fanfare, a lot of good communication to employees using various in-person or virtual means.
sure, yeah,
So that's kind of a roundabout way of how I would go at design
yeah,
and
yeah.
launch. Yeah.
So, just curious, from the perspective of our marketplace, we have probably at least four generations of workers in some organizations. So,
Mhm.
some folks, who are older and maybe moving into retirement, others that are, just getting into their career. And so, some organizations have every demographic in between. How do you create a plan that maybe works for everybody?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is that even possible?
It is. I think it is possible. I think, again, it's that fine art form of protection versus flexibility. So, more senior individuals who care about and understand risk are
Yeah,
going to say, some of them will say, I won't even come to work with you unless I know I'm protected for, say, disability or even a certain amount of drug coverage. And if that's not there, I won't even make the decision, right? So we do have to find that balance between those pieces. And then on the younger group, they really just want convenience. And I have to say this is that now the trend of benefits is moving less away from just is it paid or is it not paid to if I have a medical condition or if I have a mental health issue, how
sure.
are you going to help me through that?
Yeah,
So a lot of the plans now have much better access and navigation tools. And I have to say those, when they go well and they use those tools, you have a much better story than having an employee who, whatever happened to so and so, we never heard,
mhm,
we want these stories to be, we took care of this person, they got all the help they needed, they got a quick diagnosis, they got treatment right away, and the continuity was there between all their medical supporters. So if you are part of delivering on that, that's a huge win as an organization that you can, people are going to hear about that. Whether if it's a bad situation or a good, they're going to hear about it.
yeah, yeah.
So paying attention, I think, to getting people through the system is a big part now of how we build benefits.
Great. Um, so let's pretend I'm an HR leader in the
Hmm.
charity, or I'm the executive director, and everything's sitting on the corner of my desk. Uh, I can call XYZ large insurance company and ask
Hmm.
them for a benefits plan, or I can call an independent broker like yourself.
Hmm.
What's the value? I believe there's a perceived value. So what's the value in perhaps going with somebody like yourself who's providing independent consulting and education around the benefits plan?
Yeah, I think what most HR people honestly are looking for is a partner that they can sit on the same side of the table with and build things and do things together. And they will notice very quickly whether a broker is built for just reactive service versus proactive education and planning and forecasting and all these things. So some of that comes down to the resources that a broker brings. Obviously that's all we do. So we built our whole business around being super fast and super accurate and really proactive. And I think a lot of HR people would say, I do a lot of different things. I need you to have my back and ideally make me look good in this situation. Yeah. So if they're early in their role and they are revisiting benefits, they want to have come out of that project with a real big win. And hopefully for them, it's an easy win by upgrading everything, not necessarily spending more, but upgrading the whole experience around it. So brokers tend to be so much more price oriented. If as soon as they talk to you, if they start asking for employee data and start pricing, it's going to be an indication that you're probably going to see them once a year at renewal. It's going to be a pricing discussion, and that's about it. Yeah. If it's more about what is the broker going to do to invest in the communication aspects of the experience with employees, with the HR person? What kind of reporting are they going to see throughout the year? What kind of consistency or cadence will there be in terms of meeting with the HR person, in terms of planning and ideas, and what ideas are coming forward without someone having to ask about it? So really, a lot of that comes down to specialization. Does the consultant or broker do this primarily as their work rather than selling life insurance and money management and car insurance? Yeah. Ideally, a specialist makes more sense. Sure. And what's the experience look like through the year? Like, what does that ideally look like? And I'll say this last point is, I would ask, if I was an HR person, I'd say, what compensation am I going to be paying you? So yes, you're going to be the broker, but I'm going to pay a commission. What am I going to get back in return for that? What's the service agreement that I'm going to sign that's going to prove that I get value? And I think some brokers would really struggle with that, and others would do very well and say, well, we're built for that. Yeah. So that's a good key question to ask.
So how would you answer that?
Well, yeah, it creates, for us, it's a whole level of accountability, right? Like we take that as that's a service relationship to us. Yeah. So yes, we are paid a commission or a fee as part of the plan, but we actually have an agreement with our clients that they sign every year on what we deliver automatically. And they rate us on about 5 different key factors for service, as well as an actual NPS rating as well, in terms of whether they would ever refer us to anyone. Right. And our actual ratings are very high. So we celebrate that, we're proud of that, but we actually have that accountability to deliver on that commission. Yeah. We see it as something we have to earn. So we built that years ago, and it's surprisingly, it's very unique in the market.
Wow, that's great. Just before we go on, Roger, just want to say to the audience, I know Jem's been communicating with everybody in the chat. Certainly, if you have any questions at all that you'd like me to pose to Roger, I'm more than happy to do that. So if you want to just type in any questions you've got, we'll pass those along.
Sure.
Want it to be meaningful for everyone who's on the call today. So please don't hesitate to add any questions there to the chat, and we'll present them to Roger. So Roger, we started talking about retention. We talked about attraction for benefits to sort of be a valuable element of that as it relates to bringing people into the organization and keeping them. When you look around the market today, and particularly for smaller organizations who are hiring younger talent. Is there something specific that younger talent is looking for from their benefits plan? We mentioned a
Yeah.
little bit, older folks might be looking for protection around disability or drug plans, that type of thing. What are you seeing at the 20-something level, even coming into the marketplace and looking for their first opportunities to work with an organization?
Yeah, well, I'll say mental health is absolutely the number one sort of must-have in that relationship. But I will say though that the younger employee today is coming to work for you on their terms, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we've seen, the real flip from, I need to be at the office at a certain time and I need to clock in and clock out, and that you're measuring all these things. Now it's more, I want to run my own desk. If I can work from home most of the time, and you're giving me the autonomy to do my work under my terms, but I still have to perform. I still want to interact with my colleagues
Yeah.
and enjoy that that common, that ground that there is. So that has to be there. But I would say that benefits that fit in with that are also matching that feeling of ownership, let's just say. So,
Hmm.
and it may be that with that, they don't expect to be treated like an old school employee of, I have all the traditional benefits if I needed them, which I maybe never would.
Yeah.
So a 20 something is going to say, what can I use right now? But I will own that responsibility. Um, so a spending account is a great example of, giving an employee the autonomy to use that money as they need it, especially if it is, easy to experience getting paid a claim. I mean, would you order a taxi? No, a 20 something would say, why would you ever do that? So same thing with paying a claim, they would want to take a picture of it, have it paid right away. So
Yeah.
that's table stakes. That type of experience has to be there for them.
Yeah.
So we have to teach them how to do it, not long, because they'll figure it out in five seconds. But beyond that, I think it's anything you can do to accentuate that feeling of ownership.
Hmm.
And that leads me to, if something occurs, and if I am struggling, because with this remote work, we have people who are, in many cases, living alone, working alone,
Yeah.
and therefore I'll say mental health. There's a spectrum, of course, between being living with day-to-day stress and so on versus truly being diagnosed with an anxiety or depression diagnosis. So along that spectrum, we have people who are thriving, but we also have people who are really struggling. So how do we support that? Giving them what they need, giving them early and quick access to help is major factor there, and communicating with people openly. So I have to say there's a lot of organizations that have put in mental health features, but they don't want to talk about it. So
Yeah.
there's still a very big stigma that, it's still your issue. I hope that you get the help you need. So we need mental health first aid, which is an amazing system. There's lots of great free tools out there to learn and become much more comfortable with this conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that alone for a 20 something is, if you don't give me a safe environment to work in,
Hmm.
from that perspective, it certainly can't be toxic.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if it's safe and I can I can tell you how I'm doing on a day, then that is really important. And so that's as much of a culture issue as it is, as you know, than it is a true like a wellness issue.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, that's great. Thank you. We've had a couple questions come in, Roger.
Mhm.
One is you had mentioned the survey earlier, surveying the staff. Any examples of surveys, or even kind of the top 3 questions that you would ask in a survey?
Great. So we have a draft of something. If anyone wants it, let me know and I will send it to them. But the idea of a survey is to, first of all, ask, how well do you understand the existing plan you have?
Hmm.
Because if that's the metric that we want to use in future surveys, if we see that answer, that score improving, then we know we're doing better. Better understanding actually correlates with happier, more satisfied employees on benefits. So we ask that question. We also want to know what benefits that you have now do you appreciate? So they can tell us, well, these. Now we have some indication of what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
But we also want to know, what do you like least about the plan? And then, the chatter comes out and we can address, whoa, there's a really consistent theme going on here. Like, for example, what used to be popular in not-for-profit plans was a high degree of premium share with the employee. So they would deduct a large percentage of the cost against the employee's pay stub.
Right.
And some organizations would just do it that way for years, and they had no idea that there's a resentment behind the scenes that, I'm paying way too much for this. It's not fair. I never use the plan. So if that is a concern, we have to hear it.
Yeah.
The survey has got to tell us the truth, right? And if we can adjust that cost share somewhat, we can do that. And there's ways to shift cost around. That's a huge thing to address. So we would take also the anonymous surveys and then do focus groups as well, and say, based on the data you gave us, here are the themes that we heard. Let's talk more openly about what these things mean. Okay. Maybe we didn't quite understand the context of it in the survey. But I would say that's the basic structure. It doesn't have to be a long survey. Yeah. And we do it out on an anonymous site. We can bring that data back and let figure out what to do with it.
Great, excellent. And so, yeah, if anybody missed it there, Roger can make an example available to you, and certainly let us know, or put your information, send it to the host, and we can get that information sent to you from Roger as well. Another question here, Roger. How do you take a plan that helps fill the gap between an employee and the employee spouse plan? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, I guess spending accounts are the best for that, probably. So the great thing about that is if two people have a plan, then they can coordinate across each other's plan. Yeah. The spending account is always that last line of defense. So many cases when you have a group where you have a lot of families and a lot of families with two plans, the spending account is a great buffer, and it may actually get very little utilization. Because remember, like, we've actually designed a lot of plans now that are we call them hybrid. They don't have dental. They actually just use the spending account as the payment tool for dental, paramedical, and vision. And what happens is someone's spousal plan can actually pick up a lot of those claims, and then only the excess would ever come through the spending account. So I know that's kind of funny in the way you're asking somebody else's plan to fund those claims, but it works. Yeah. And once they exhaust the spousal plan across the family, then the spending account comes in last. Yeah. So that hybrid design actually has worked really, really well with really any organization. It's both more flexible and it's much more cost consistent.
Yeah, for sure. You bring up a good point there. Some are family plans, and I would assume might be more expensive. Others presumably could be focused on an individual. Is there a distinction between those kinds of plans for organizations?
It's pretty standard fare to have a plan that protects an employee, whether they are single or family. So a family benefit would include coverage for every family member. They would have their own limit within that coverage. We have plans too that distinguish couple. So a lot of that is often done just for pricing reasons, so that if there is premium share with an employee, then a couple is not paying a share of what, say, a family would pay.
Right. Okay.
But I would say, there are these traditional designs, but we don't have to do it that way. We could have benefits that are flat. If all we really want to do is protect the employee, and that's as much as we can afford, we can create limits and benefits that are specific to the employee. I've also seen an interesting trend, which was mentioned in the article, which was recognizing tenure.
Hmm.
So instead of recognizing you have a family, therefore we have to protect you and all your family, what about benefits are equal across, but if you're here for 3, 5, or 10 years, your limits or your reimbursement levels rise, or maybe
Okay.
the share of the premium ultimately goes away. So like vacation allotment,
Yeah.
people earn that level, and it's much harder for them to go to another job for somebody to be able to match that level.
Yeah.
So I think tenure is another way to recognize the class sections of a plan.
No, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Perfect. Um, Another question here for you, Roger. Can a small organization afford to provide a benefits plan to their team? And what would kind of be a base type of plan?
Okay. I'll really recommend that people look at this hybrid concept. So, unfortunately, years and years have gone by where people have gotten stuck in these pooled plans where
Yeah.
I'm 4 or 5 employees and I belong in, not to say that the chamber plan doesn't have a place, but an
Right.
association plan, unfortunately, the premiums can be based on the entire pool and have nothing to do with your usage. Therefore, the costs kind of go up and they don't have anything to do with you. But they're also so vanilla that the employees don't really get excited about them. So a
Sure.
hybrid plan would provide the basic level of protection for things like life and disability and say an allotment for drug coverage.
Yeah.
But all the rest of those benefits, be it dental, paramedical, that's massage, physio, chiro, and such, and vision, they're put in the spending account.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
what I love about that design is not only do employees like the control they have over that experience, but for the employer, they have much more cost certainty. So the
Hmm.
premiums are flatter and predictable. The spending accounts put an actual maximum on that exposure of usage. So they can only spend up to that maximum. Therefore, they know what they're in for.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think smaller organizations should definitely look to more of that design than to a wide open plan that could, I mean, we've seen renewals in small groups go up by 50 or 100% in 1 year because the claims, the plan design just was too exposed to these types of claims, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a practical question, because I think it's different for a lot of different plans these days, but there seems to be, just a higher level of technology involved with benefits plans these days. So, you mentioned it earlier, taking a picture of your receipt and sending it in. And I suspect there's still some that are well behind the curve as far as technology.
Mm-hmm.
How does somebody kind of manage their benefits plan when they're either at the HR level or even at the individual level?
It's getting much better, much easier. There's still a lot of legacy systems in insurance companies that haven't changed, and they are slow to change because you can imagine you might have a claim system that doesn't connect very well with the billing system or the background system. So, and you may have an insurance company that's consolidated 5 times with 5 different carrier platforms in it. So there are newer third-party companies that take that technology and do it themselves, but they use insurance companies behind the scenes to do the protective piece.
Okay.
So there is companies that have built the systems from scratch that actually work better than some of the legacy systems. So it does pay to know the full market offering of who's out there and who does what.
Yeah.
And it has gotten easier for both the employee as well as the administrator to manage data, to put people on the plan, take them off. In fact, enrollments are often done completely by a link to the employee
Right.
to fill it in. That's much easier to do. So
Sure.
it is getting better. It's still somewhat antiquated in some places. I would say though, technology-wise though, what I like to see is where wearables and wellness features are going to become part of the health aspect of an employee. So,
Interesting.
I can't believe how much information that this watch can tell me, but it's not going to be that long before everyone has it, and all of that health data isn't going to be released in terms of, Dave, I can see that you have something blipped on your
Yeah,
phone, but we
right.
can see there's some trends going on here. And if we mirror that with what's called health risk assessment data, so if you ask employees about their daily activity, we
Mm.
can actually start to see trends and start to maybe build a plan or even build education around those factors,
Yeah.
right?
So,
So we are in a new age coming in that regard. That's I hope is going to be a good thing.
yeah. So in some respects, the healthier your team, cheaper your benefits, right?
Or their attendance levels are better, their productivity is better, they
Yeah.
are much more engaged. So there is a definite business case or case
Yeah.
for sure for having a healthier employee.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we definitely have to keep that conversation part of this as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, we're coming up on time here, Roger.
Mm.
You've given us a lot of information today, for which we're very grateful. If somebody wants to reach out to you, how should they get a hold of you to have a conversation?
Yeah, we pretty much live on LinkedIn. That's the world of operations and HR is really there. So if you look me up by way of Roger Thorpe or Thorpe Benefits, we can connect that way. We have become kind of a private back channel to a lot of people in that environment, meaning
Great.
you don't have to worry if you have an existing plan, an existing broker. You can always ask us questions or get opinions without feeling like you're, obligated or that you're interrupting some existing relationship. So LinkedIn is a great channel for you to and to learn. So you'll see once you connect that we share really everything from our modeling tools, our video library, to our upcoming symposium, which you're certainly welcome to attend on that as well.
Yeah. You want to mention that, Roger? Because I forgot to.
Sure. So every spring we have it's called the Benefits and Wellness Superhero Symposium, on the sense that we think that HR and ops people really should be the hero in the story. And so we do a once a year all benefits and wellness education that people can take away, and it's very interactive. So they would obviously meet a lot of other people in the same situation. So you can come to the live event downtown Toronto on May 18th, but if you're not in Toronto, you can attend virtually on June 1st and have a similar experience and still meet people, and learn a ton in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, oh, that's great. I am signed up to attend in person, so looking
Awesome.
forward to that night.
Wouldn't that be interesting? In-person event again. I hope.
Yeah, right.
Starting to become more normal to do that.
It feels a lot better, that's for sure.
It does.
So thanks, Jim has put some of the links into the chat there for connecting with Roger and with Thorpe Benefits. So please follow those. That would be great. Roger, just thanks again for being with us today. Appreciate all that you've contributed, both in the article on the blog. So remember to go there if you want to see more of what Roger has written about, and for being with us today. And well, not in person, but we're in person enough, I guess.
Close enough.
So appreciate that. And yeah, just want to thank everyone again for attending today. It was great of you to join us.